everybody, it's Kelly. I've got another process video for you. This video is a little different because I did not choose many of these supplies, and I'll explain that to you in just a minute. I'm going to ink the edges of these papers, and the reason that is because Ben Franklin, which is nearish me, has a little contest, and it's to create a scrapbook layout from a selected amount of supplies, and everybody gets the same kit, and then the customers that come in vote on what their favorite layout is. So I decided to do something really different. I've never done anything like this before, and decided to take up this challenge. So those of you who work with scrapbook kits do this all the time, but I don't subscribe to a kit club. So this is a little different for me. So that black and white paper and that green paper, well, the black and white paper is from my mind's eye because I recognize it. I recognize that there's a diamond pattern on the back that I recognize. The green paper, I happen to have an extra piece in my stash. That is from Jelly Bean Soup Chit Chat Chowder, and it's called Toasted Talk. That circle paper there, I have no idea what the name of that is. And just so you know, with this particular process, you can combine these pieces any way you want, but you have to use a recognizable amount of each of them. And you can add things from your stash as long as you don't add multiples of anything. So like I happen to have that green doily, I happen to have those in my stash, but I can only use one on my page because that's all anybody else gets is one. And I have more of that green paper in my stash, but I'm not allowed to use any more than the bit that they gave me. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of putting these things down, the papers down, and trying to use different kind of widths of the paper. So let me tell you a little bit about why I did what I did. I started out with that black and white stripe there because it's probably the boldest paper in some ways. I guess the green paper you could consider bold as well, but to my eye, that bold stripe really calls attention to itself. And then the green would be the next boldest, and I'm going to use that green underneath the photo so that your eye will go to the photo because of the green. But there's also green in grass in the photo, so those two things will kind of work together to draw your eye. The paper will work together. So then I'm using this pink paper here, and I use that to map my photo. And now that blue paper is kind of an outlier. There's no other blue in any of the other supplies on this layout except for the border paper that I used, which I'll talk about in a second. So I like it because it's so different and really causes you to really look at that photo. So I decided I wanted to use it. The other side was white with a bunch of arrows, and you could use any of the sides you wanted to. I just chose to use these. So I cut a very thin border of that blue paper, and just so it wouldn't stand out all by itself, I obviously used the blue in the photo to match with the blue in the paper, so it's neutralizing that blue a little bit more. And then I put a blue border around the whole thing. And that border paper, polka dot border paper, is from Bella Boulevard. It's the soccer collection, and it's called Driblet. All right, so when I was thinking about doing these pieces in layers, it made me think of tucking things in. So I cut that doily in half, and I'm, quote, tucking it in two spots. I did grab a journaling card from my mind's eye. I don't have a collection name here, from my own stash, because I tend to use journaling cards to journal on, as you know if you follow me at all. So I grabbed that, and it has some blue in it again too, so I'm bringing more blue in when I can. We were also given these black circles with sentiments like hi and congratulations and thank you, but I wasn't doing a card or anything like that. So I was originally going to use the hi and then hide the other two. I think it said thank you. I can't see that anymore. Anyway, I was going to hide that, or use the hi, but in the end I end up hiding every sentiment, which I think is cool. So there I'm just using the shape and the black color. Then I'm using these arrow stickers here, and the one on the bottom which says hooray is going on top of a wood circle piece, and I don't know where that wood circle piece or where these arrow stickers came from. There's an arrow sticker at the top that says thinking of you, but that arrow is pointing off the layout to the right. I'm going to solve that though in just a little bit, and I'll show you how. Then I added 2 of these bows, and those bows are from the Paper Studio, the Flea Market Fancy, and they're the mini bright bows. So I added a pink one to kind of bring in some more pink from the mat and from that pink paper. And then I added a navy one on the bottom there to bring in a little bit more blue. So again, I like to use papers that have like some sort of stripe or dot that have all the colors that I use from a layout, but I couldn't do that with this paper, with this kit, because there was no paper like that. So I'm having to kind of really think on my feet to figure out how can I get all of these things to work together. Now, as I was talking, I also selected that wood camera circle that's up in the top cluster. That is from L Studio. It was from their February 2017 releases. And what that's doing is I'm going to place that so that you can't see that that piece is pointing off to the right, that sticker is pointing off to the right. So that was a clever little way to disguise it, if I do say so myself, because you don't want arrows pointing off your page, because then people's eyes go off the page instead of staying focused on your journaling and your photo being the most important. So little tricks to draw your eye to things. If you have an arrow, point it at the photo, and don't point it away from the photo, more importantly. All right, so now I'm really getting pretty far towards getting a recognizable amount of everything. So then we got this fiber, this green fiber. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Originally, I was going to string it through that wood piece, but I ended up not using it that way. So now I just decided to take some, and remember when we all used to wrap thread around our fingers and put it behind scrapbook layouts? If you did it long enough, Shamel did that, I think, a lot. Shamel? Yeah, I think Shamel did. I think Nicole Jones did it all the time too when she was first doing process videos. But that's how I'm going to do it here. And now I'm just kind of checking to see how I can use these things. And what happened is there's some black foam squares there, and I was going to use them underneath that cluster. Excuse me. But the rules said something about them being, you have to be able to see them used in reasonable, used in like amount, a recognizable amount. That's what it says. And I thought, you know, I'm not sure if it qualifies if it's sitting behind something, that I need to figure out how to use those as embellishments. So yes, folks, I'm going to use foam squares as an embellishment, but you'll have to wait for that. Not ready yet. So I'll use my foam tape to get that cluster up. And because that wood piece is so thick, I have to really put the other stickers up on quite a few layers. So what I did is I just put some ATG down, and I'm just kind of pushing the fibers into that. Sorry, you guys. I can't tell if I have allergies or if I've got another little bit of a cold. I tend to think it's really more allergies because it came on fast and I didn't feel bad. The weather in my part of the Midwest has been crazy. It's hot one day and cold the next, and that's really tough on my system. I'm actually allergic to that condition. There is actually a medical condition for that. So anyway, bothers my sinuses a lot. And now you know way too much. TMI, Kelly, TMI. Anyway, so I'm adding more foam tape. I guess this is kind of helping you, you know, I'm taking up time. That's what I wanted to say as I was doing the fibers there. So I'm just taking my Scotch tacky glue in my fine line bottle there and gluing that doily down even more. It was kind of caught underneath things, and I'd put a little bit of glue on it, but wanted to do some more. And now I'm working on gluing up those black circles, and I'm going to have to play a little bit here because the bow is going to cover one of the phrases on them, but I also need to make sure that that arrow sticker there covers up some of the other ones. So now I'm going to glue, now that I kind of have that cluster down, I know that my doily is okay where it is. So I'm going to glue that down even more. I didn't want to do that just in case I was going to try to need to move it. All right, and again, I'm using some of the fibers there. I have to tell you, when I'm all done with this, this is such a crazy layout with all the combinations of things. And I'm using two, kind of like I'm using a chevron and a stripe on the same layout, but because it goes from bold to light, it works really well. It's just crazy that this all works in my head. I would never have chosen these supplies to go together, ever. But it works, and it was really fun to do. So I'm not sure if by the time you see this, if I'll know what's happened with the contest or not. If I do, I'll put it in the bottom. I think the contest goes through the end of March, so I might actually know if mine was chosen as a favorite. And I think there's a first, second, and third prize, and they're all gift certificates to Ben Franklin, which I would really like to win anyway. I spend money for supplies there, so. All right, so now I am going to use these gold gems, and I'm going to put 2 in each cluster. They gave us 4, so I'll use those all up. And I just kind of tucked them in there. They were pretty big, so I think there's one that's fully exposed, but other than that, they're all pretty much sort of tucked in behind other things. And I like the way that worked. Okay, so now this is how I'm using these foam squares. I'm going to use them as like a square enamel dot, basically. And I'm just going to tuck them in. So they're going to think I'm either crazy or brilliant. You know, crazy because I didn't use a foam square as a foam square, or brilliant because I didn't use a foam square as a foam square. But it was something kind of different for me. You know, if I didn't have to use them that way, I would never have done it. But, you know, they're black. I've got black on the layout, so I think that works. And they're down now. That's it. All right, so I had kind of gotten a little bit of ink on that blue paper in the beginning, so I just went through and inked the edges of that. Here's the still shot and a couple of detail shots. Hope you're all well. I'll be back with another layout again soon. Bye!